Welcome to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke, and today's guest is Erin Celise. She is a certified soul realignment practitioner and Akashic Records reader. Her work traces the origin of your soul, the past lives and patterns still shaping you now to uncover why old karma and generational trauma keep resurfacing in the present. In this episode, we'll discuss soul origin, spirit guide communication, and how the soul's blueprint can reveal what's really driving you. Erin, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Soul blueprint. I'm beginning to hear a lot about that these days. Is there any particular reason or not necessarily?
From my perspective, I think there is a reason. I would say that's because we are now in a place where more and more people are starting to realize that there is way more to this 3D world than we thought before. But I think we've been through this before as a society, but we are now in this place again where we are actually starting to really pay attention to these things. So yeah, I would say there's a lot more people. I would say 10, 15 years ago, I wouldn't have even considered knowing what a soul blueprint was. And now I almost base my personality around it and being able to understand other people that way.
I would say the same thing. 10 or 15 years ago, I would probably not have heard about it, but does that have anything to do with gene keys or human design or not necessarily?
I'm going to say yes, because I think everything is converging for a reason. There's a lot of things, and I'll come up with these ideas, let's say, and I think I have something so unique because I had a deep meditation. I came up with an amazing idea, and it turns out there's probably 100 other people who had the same idea. And on the one hand, I'm like, okay, darn, I guess I'm not that unique or that wasn't that special. But I also think we're also, a lot of us, getting the same kind of downloads. It would make sense that everything is actually aligned and related versus being these one-offs where this person is really special and magical and getting this and no one else can. I just think there's a lot more of us now, which is why these circles of the spiritual people, the metaphysical, the galactic interfacing is so much bigger now. There's just more of us who are in tune with it.
Much, much bigger. Now, you mentioned a moment ago that you feel that our civilization had this happen before. Is that based on some kind of a download or past life memory or something else?
Yeah, kind of all of the above. But yeah, essentially one of my big experiences where I just came into that full realization that this isn't real, which is really disturbing when you actually come into it and understand that, because you have to go through a moment of then nothing matters. But you come out of that going, hold on, no, it does matter what I do now. But with that, I got the full sense that we have done this before. And it was almost sad to think of it because I have gotten to this level so many times. And I think each time I do it, I get a little further. But it was kind of this realization, like, I don't remember doing this before, but I have.
But you have.
Yeah.
Now, was that a reference to past lives where you worked to get to this point before so many times? Or was that in this incarnation?
No, this was definitely past lives. It's almost like Groundhog's Day, but you're not Bill Murray. You're one of the other characters, so you don't remember it happening, but it is happening over and over.
All right. It would have been funnier if you said it was like Bill Murray in Stripes, but that's a different conversation for another day. First of all, you approach your work primarily through the Akashic Records.
Yes.
Okay. So what are the Akashic Records? Because people often have slightly different interpretations of what it is and also how they use it. So what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I love this conversation. I've also read the books and listened to other people, and people have known about this stuff way longer than I have, how they all see it. I think probably the core is it's really hard to explain because it is something that is above us. But I think the best explanation I have is that it is a record, and it doesn't really matter what it looks like. I've heard like, oh, there's going to be pillars and they're gold. I'm not sure that we need something that concrete, but I think the best way to look at it is your own personal library of everything your soul has done and will do.
Will do.
It is not set. Yeah. And what it will do, because if you have this whole library, you haven't read everything yet. You haven't experienced everything in it yet. The part that I really love about Akashic Records, though, is that it's so tied to what we do in the 3D and what we do here. It's about our choices, and that's how we change our karma, is actually doing something here and doing something different here. I like to explain to people when we first have our session is like, you have these things that were essentially they're put on your shelves from a past life, but that doesn't mean you can't take that down and trade it with something else. You might have this history, if you want to call it that, this past life history of really bad karma. You just incarnated and kept doing this kind of terrible thing, or you had this energy that was with you and it kept repeating and repeating. That doesn't mean now that you're aware that you have to keep doing that. So it's not like sometimes I think of if it's in the stars and that's just who you are and that's just how it is. This is much more fluid. Like if you're conscious about it and you say, I'm going to make a choice, I'm going to do something different, I put an intention out there, I want to clear this, you get to. And I think that's really empowering.
Okay. What you just mentioned a moment ago is really interesting. The records, right? It's like a library of what you've done and what you will do. Now, I'm going to attempt to link that to two different things. One, past lives. Many people will say there is no time. They all exist at once. That would make it a little easier to understand a record of everything you've done and will do, because of the no time element. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. We're starting to hear a lot more about astrological charts, how that's tied to going into the age of Aquarius, going into a new age, old systems breaking down, etc. Right? It's a cycle. Now, is there a link between that and your work with the Akashic Records?
You said something really interesting that and makes me go absolutely yes. And that is we're in this cycle. And I think that goes back to the first thing we talked about, where this is a really exciting time to be alive. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of turmoil. There's a lot of change. There's a lot of systems being disrupted. Yes, we are actually experiencing that cycle in this life right now, those of us who are here.
When someone starts to talk about the blueprint can be tied to astrology, the charts, the movement of the planets and so forth, and cycles, like you just said, right? That influences everything. And if you want to take it a step further, with past lives comes the life in between life stage, the planning, the pre-birth planning, and the soul contracts. So wouldn't it make sense to propose that there's some kind of connection between the astrological effect, the movement of the planets and how it affects us humans, and soul contracts? Is there a relationship there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because the more movement there is going on, the more that's going to cause upset in current systems, basically. So yes, yeah, and you said soul contracts, that's a huge one. There's different kinds of contracts that we carry through unknowingly that can kind of affect us, where people get stuck in these contracts not even knowing they're there. So yes, that is absolutely true. And then part of the soul blueprint is your origin, which does come from the star systems. And so it is all very connected.
Average people like me who are not intuitives, we're not mediums, we're not seers or anything like that. We listen to this stuff with interest, but we're trying to basically connect the dots. So when you talk about astrology, past lives, reincarnation, the star people, all these things, they can't just be random, can they?
No, there's always been like that little subgroup of people that have always been in touch, and we'll always get a new group that is in touch with this. And they now, I think, are going, I told you so, because there's so many more people. The pool is getting much, much more full of people who are getting it and hearing it and paying attention and maybe not dismissing it as much as we used to. There's been this sense of being like really grounded in the 3D, and there's people whose the way they succeed in life is being in the 3D. So when there's so many of us that start looking at the 4D and then the 5D and beyond, that's really scary, and that's energetically very disruptive. So they're going to start fighting back. And it could be a literal fighting back, but it could also be like, no, I have to pull this energy back in, because it's really scary thinking that we're going to ascend to that point where we don't need these 3D bodies, but we're all these beautiful soul creatures in the stars. That's not for some time.
I was about to say the same thing, because I don't think we really have to worry about that today in 2026, or most likely in this lifetime, but I kind of get where you're going with that. So in your work, when you use the records and you're cognizant of the other influences like the planets and everything else that affects us. How do you repair past life karma, or what some people call generational trauma?
Yeah, there's a lot of naming of it. My particular method is to get information and then actually have an hour to 2 hours by myself where I access the person's records and go through things fairly methodically. So it works for me because there's a very structured way to go through and a lot of questions to answer. And let's name the different energies. Let's name what's stuck. Let's name those traumas. And then I free flow the stories. I gather all the information and what the energies are, name them all. Do you have a soul contract? Is it with another person? Is it around poverty, codependency? But then sit down and I just have a notebook where I start just kind of download things. Okay, oh, this was 6 lifetimes ago. You were a man. This started. And then these stories kind of flow. And I've never had any of the two come up the same. And then sharing them with people. And I've had multiple people say, you're telling my life right now. Like, how did you know? I'm like, I didn't. This is the story that came up from this many lifetimes ago. You're just repeating it.
In this practice, when you have a client, do you go off by your own and try to open up the records and so on? Or is this all inclusive in one session?
I get everything together, get all the stories and get everything. And then we do basically a session together where it's kind of the results session. And so let's go through, let's see what's in there. Now we get to go through it, decompress, I suppose, analyze, look through, see what's there, see what resonates, and then make a choice at the end. Do you want to clear this? Pretty much the answer is always yes, but sometimes people really identify with that part of themselves and they're not ready to let go of it.
You also incorporate messages from spirit guides, right? Is there an intersection between spirit guides and communication from that person's higher self? Or for you, is it separate? How does that work?
No, they're definitely connected because your spirit guide, your spirit team are in with your higher self. A lot of times, those ones I can actually do in real time. We'll have sessions and it's even 30 minutes or an hour and it's just the spirit guides helping you through. That's one that I can do at like a convention or with a booth is just walk up, let's get a couple messages from you. If you really want to dig in and know your whole team, then I like to sit down and have more time. But the spirit guides are always talking to you or always trying to communicate with you. And it's really hard to listen because you're not really sure what you're looking for, what you're listening for. But once you do, then it becomes more obvious and you become more aware and open and willing to see and hear it and kind of take those messages with you.
Speaking of seeing and hearing, which clairs do you have? And when communicating with the spirit guides, do you actually get visuals or how does that work?
Mine are almost all visuals. There's a lot of depth and images come up and then kind of scenes and very expansive is how they come to me. So yeah, it's a lot of images and sometimes quick messages, but it's not really voices. There's definitely more images and a lot of metaphors.
Okay. What do these characters look like? Is it what we want them to look like or what that person wants them to look like?
They come in all forms. So, that's one of the questions I can kind of ask and try to get an interpretation. Sometimes they're just a ball of kind of light coming out. Sometimes they're more structural. Sometimes they present like a Greek goddess. Sometimes I've had people that are just like full on punk rockers. That's just what I see. Like, just like some badasses, just like, I got you. We're going to fight. We're going to
Really?
party.
I've been told many times that they can have a sense of humor and even be like a little snarky. Is that true?
Oh, yes.
That's what I would want. Every single person tells me everyone has them, and sometimes more than one. What I wanted to ask you was, when you incorporate the messages from the communication from the spirit guides, when this person in your practice has a habit of doing something over and over again, and you ask if it needs to be cleared, does something or someone ever come forth and say, well, no, they're not ready to do that yet because that's part of their contract? Does that ever come up?
Yeah, sometimes it's not necessarily part of the contract, but just they're not ready yet. And I've even had people ask me, should I do this? And the guides go, no, it's not time. And it might be something like, I'm really excited to do this move or buy this thing. And they think they're ready, but the message comes through. It's like, not quite. We're not going to do that yet.
You don't think that has anything to do with the contract or the agreement or the lesson?
Yeah, because we also can go through and see what are the life lessons that you're supposed to be doing this time around. What are the things that kind of your soul decided before coming in, these are the things I'm going to work on, if we want to put it that way. So yeah, there's some of those life lessons too, for sure.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the origin. When you say origin, could that possibly refer to the home planet and where we came from, or is it?
Absolutely. Yep.
Right. We're hearing a lot about that these days. How do you approach that? How does that work?
That's part of the initial soul blueprint, where let's figure out where your origin is, and that sort of shapes and adds the foundation for the rest of what we're going to talk about. Because if you're Procyon or Mintaka, there's different ways that you're going to approach something that is going to put you into energetic alignment. My simple example is, let's figure out who you are at soul origin, because there's different ways to be in alignment. And you might go into the store and buy one apple, and that's putting you more in alignment. But another soul was supposed to buy two, and buying one is like a depletion. And so that's actually putting them in a negative polarity. So knowing what the soul origin is important. And then we go into energy centers. So essentially divine gifts. And people have one or two of those where your soul has kind of a specialty that it's really good at. And these things are just lovely because they're parts of us that we never consider gifts. They're just things that come easy to us. Like, that's just who we are. But in the soul sense, it's your divine gift. It's something that makes you unique and special. And people go, oh, I never really thought of that. Yeah, this is just something about you that is really valuable to the world. So lean into that.
And isn't that part of human design, or is it similar to that?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
It almost doesn't matter what you call it or what modality you come from. Yes, they all come back. We have these unique gifts, and there's kind of a finite number of them. There's a lot of different permutations you can do with them. But yeah, it essentially kind of comes down to that we're pretty mappable, if you want to think of it that way. Humans are pretty mappable as a species.
Right. Speaking of being mappable, if you know someone's origin is Pleiades, for instance, and he was born January the 5th, 1974, whatever, then everything else like the human design and his or her sensitivities or gifts, as you say, are going to become a little bit more clearer, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And then if you add like Enneagrams or anything else, like you're just building this story and this origin story about yourself that I think becomes really powerful. The more people can kind of identify with these different ways of mapping themselves, if you want to call it that again, it kind of increases like your ability to really move through life very consciously and understanding yourself and like, okay, this is a decision I should make. This one is, let me think on that one a little more. And I think hugely though, it helps you understand other people too.
Because we're all different types. I think it helps people understand others and what their particular purpose or what they should be doing as opposed to everyone else. And I think it really does appeal to the people that do appreciate structure. One person might think, I don't believe in any of this woo-woo crap, but this is cool because it's based on planetary movement. When I was born, I have to really see how this actually maps everything out.
Yeah, and that's okay. I think the reality is we get to believe whatever we want to believe, but that doesn't stop the fact that we come from somewhere and have these certain traits. I've done readings for everybody in every religion and different cultures, and I've had people frame it in Catholicism and in their Jewish faith, which I thought that would clash, and it really didn't. It didn't.
It did not. Okay. All right. Can you imagine where someone could do let's say a hybrid between a blueprint reading and a mediumship reading, or does that make no sense at all?
No, it totally makes sense, because I think you get those intuitive interpretations. I think what's interesting is we'll probably all come to very similar
conclusions,
thank you, but through our own lens, because you can't help but filter. This is my filter, and anything that comes through me is going to come through me and come through my voice, and anybody else doing it, that's going to come through there. So I think you would end up getting more information about yourself in doing this. I still think you would end up being like, oh, okay, these two things do make sense. Yeah, the psychic thing is fun. I think it's really fun.
Okay. So being what your gifts are, what they are, would you consider yourself a psychic or not necessarily?
I don't think so, because I don't think there's future seeing, or I do believe I have communications with spirit guides, which are souls. So it's like still I'm talking to souls. Although, I don't know if it was you or someone else pointed out, isn't a soul just a person who isn't on this plane anymore? I'm like, I never thought of it that way, because I thought, oh, if I'm going to talk to someone, it's this entity floating behind me. Honestly, your soul guides are probably entities floating behind you or above you anyway.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I suppose I could try that hat on, but I don't.
What you just described, being able to communicate with entities that are not on this plane, I do think that constitutes mediumship, even though many intuitives don't like that label because they don't give mediumship readings, but they can communicate with those that have passed away. So with those type of sensibilities that you have, and people talking about disclosure, moving into the Aquarian age, does that give you any insight into what we can expect in the very near future?
Sometimes. My sense is there is going to be that event, but I don't know if it's a singular event. Yeah, the big one I got is there is going to be a point where there's so many of us that put out this energy at the same time. And to me, what it looked like is just the field of people all understanding our spiritual selves and our higher selves, and understanding there is that plane beyond that we're connected to, sending out this energy blast in all directions at the same time. And it's so strong that people who are resisting it, because it's scary to them to have to think about, oh no, there's more to this because I'm really concrete right now. This is what I do. And it's not always necessarily positive lives, but that's what it is. It's right here, right now. It's going to be so big that they can't help but to feel it and shift.
So with your journey, what are the most important things, or what is the most important thing you've learned?
So these lessons, they come in, you don't really have necessarily a happy eureka moment where you're like, oh, now everything's better. There's a bit of that ego death, and it might not even be big. It's just these little pieces. But the big one that I really struggled with, and I did not want to hold on to, is that we are still the divine creators of our own experience. I went through this thing, is it my fault? Everything that's ever happened to me, am I to blame for it? But it wasn't that. It took me a while to get through that. No, it's not my fault. But these things did happen, but it's still my responsibility what I did with it and how I continued after it. And since everybody's in charge of their own existence, we're all kind of doing our own existence and clashing. I'm trying to exist here and whatever, wear my sun hat, and someone could walk by and their existence is to flick it off my head. Now I'm mad, but I get this big sense of like we're all clashing, trying to have our existence in the same plane. And that creates a lot of conflict.
In the same plane, but isn't the plan, according to some thought leaders, is that we're going to go from the 3D to more of a group consciousness, but moving into a different phase. And I think that's what the Aquarian age is at least partly about, isn't it?
Yeah. And maybe that's already happening. Maybe we are starting to connect consciously, because I've been on these Zoom calls where there's people across the country and we're all meditating together, and there's definitely something there. And again, like I would have never considered that a possibility, but there is definitely energy that connects us, and maybe we're just becoming more aware of it. That
current that connects us all.
Yeah. And then maybe as we're aware of it, we can start more purposely using it. And where we are connected more in a way that's beneficial. But there's some people who are so, I am this being and I will do things only for myself.
I think what a lot of us trying to get away from, service to self to service of others, which again is more of a group consciousness type vibe, for lack of a better word.
But some people are going to resist it, and it's going to be very ugly.
It could be. Anything else we need to know, at least for tonight?
Listen to that higher self. It's out there.
Listen to your higher self. I think we'll stop right there. Erin, thanks for joining us tonight. Very cool information. In the meantime, how can our listeners find you online?
Yeah, my website is called joysoulliving.com, and that's an easy way to find me. I'm on Facebook too, so happy to talk to anybody and message anybody that wants to get in touch.
You've been listening to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing. In the meantime, you can find more info and episodes on closertovenus.com. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.